The arrival of the Normans. Despite the retreat of Viking power, Ireland remained politically fragmented. That weakness opened the door to a new wave of invaders. In 1169, Anglo-Norman knights from Britain landed in Ireland at the invitation of a local king, Dermot MacMurrough, who was seeking help in a dynastic conflict. The Normans, led by Richard de Clare, better known as Strongbow, seized large portions of Leinster. Their success alarmed King Henry II of England, who feared the rise of an independent Norman kingdom in Ireland. In 1171, he arrived with an army and declared himself overlord of the island. His son, Prince John, was later named the first Lord of Ireland. Over the next few decades, the Normans expanded their control, especially around Dublin, known as the Pale. But the conquest was incomplete. Gaelic chiefs held on to much of the island, particularly in the north and west. By the 15th century, English authority in Ireland had shrunk dramatically, confined mostly to the Pale, while Gaelic culture and power reasserted itself across the rest of the island. The Tudor conquest and religious conflict. A new chapter of conflict began in the 16th century under the Tudor dynasty. Determined to fully control Ireland, the English crown launched a more aggressive campaign of conquest. This coincided with the Protestant Reformation. When Henry VIII broke from the Catholic Church, he extended his new religious order to Ireland, where it was fiercely resisted. In 1541, he declared himself King of Ireland, transforming the old lordship into a separate, but still subordinate, kingdom. Tudor officials attempted to integrate Irish elites by offering them English titles and legal recognition, but most Gaelic lords rejected the terms and resisted. The Fitzgerald family in Munster led two rebellions, both crushed by English forces. Their lands were confiscated and given to Protestant English settlers in what became known as the Plantation of Munster. In the north, resistance reached its peak in the 9 Years' War, led by Hugh O'Neill, the powerful Earl of Tyrone. O'Neill united many Gaelic lords and won several victories, gaining support from Catholic Spain. But in 1601, the Irish and Spanish forces were defeated at the Battle of Kinsale. In 1607, O'Neill and other Ulster lords fled Ireland in what became known as the Flight of the Earls, marking the final collapse of the old Gaelic order. The Plantation of Ulster and a new demographic landscape. With Ireland now under English control, King James I began a major colonization effort in Ulster in 1609. Huge swathes of land were confiscated from Irish lords and redistributed to Protestant settlers from England and Scotland, particularly Scottish Presbyterians. New towns were built and old ones renamed, such as Derry, which became Londonderry to honor its English sponsors. This project radically changed the demographics of Northern Ireland and laid the groundwork for future division. The history of Ireland, from colonization to the quest for unity. While plantations had taken place earlier in Leinster and Munster, and later in Connaught, it was the massive colonization of Ulster in the early 1600s that had the most lasting impact. These projects introduced a loyal Protestant landowning class, but also sowed deep resentment among the native Catholic population. The result was centuries of conflict. That tension finally erupted in 1641. Amidst the wider upheaval of the English Civil War, Irish Catholics launched a rebellion to reclaim land and resist increasingly harsh anti-Catholic policies. The uprising began in Ulster with attacks on Protestant settlers, and violence soon spread across the island, escalating into a bloody sectarian conflict. The Protestant ascendancy and penal laws. Further upheaval followed in the latter 17th century. After the monarchy was restored in 1660, a Catholic king, James II, rose to power in 1685. But just 3 years later, he was overthrown during the Glorious Revolution. James fled to Ireland and tried to use it as a base to reclaim his throne. Many Irish Catholics rallied to his cause, temporarily gaining control over much of the island. But they were ultimately defeated by the forces of William of Orange, now King William III of England, at the Battle of the Boyne, 1690, and the Battle of Aughrim, 1691. In the aftermath, the penal laws were imposed, designed to suppress Ireland's Catholic majority. Catholics were banned from voting, serving in parliament, holding public office, owning firearms, or inheriting land. By 1700, Ireland was ruled by the Protestant ascendancy, a small Anglican elite that controlled vast estates and the Irish Parliament in Dublin. Meanwhile, the dispossessed Catholic majority, over three-quarters of the population, were reduced to tenant farmers. Gaelic culture and Catholicism survived mostly among the rural poor. The 18th century, resistance and revolution. Though the 18th century was more stable, resentment simmered. Inspired by the American and French revolutions, some Protestants, particularly Presbyterians in Ulster, began to advocate reform. In 1782, under Henry Grattan, the Irish Parliament gained a degree of legislative independence. But real change remained elusive. In 1791, a group of radicals in Belfast formed the Society of United Irishmen, hoping to unite Catholics and Protestants in a common cause, Irish independence. Their ideals culminated in the Rebellion of 1798, led by Theobald Wolfe Tone. Though poorly coordinated, it was the largest Irish uprising of the era. The British crushed the rebellion with brutal force. Tens of thousands died, especially in Ulster and Wexford. Wolfe Tone was captured and died in prison, becoming a martyr for Irish nationalism. The 19th century, famine and emigration. Though the Act of Union was seen by many as the death of Irish autonomy, the fight for rights continued. In 1829, Irish politician Daniel O'Connell secured Catholic emancipation, finally allowing Catholics to serve in Parliament after centuries of exclusion. But any progress was soon overshadowed by catastrophe. In the 1840s, Ireland faced one of the worst disasters in its history. Over-reliant on the potato, most of Ireland's poor were devastated when a fungal blight struck the crop in 1845. The result was the Great Famine. Between 1845 and 1849, around 1 million people died of starvation or disease. Another million fled the island, many to the United States, Canada, Australia, and Britain. The British government's slow and inadequate response only deepened Irish anger. By 1850, the population had fallen by at least a quarter. Gaelic-speaking rural society was shattered. The famine became a defining trauma, one that reinforced calls for Irish self-government. The road to independence. In the late 1800s, the Home Rule movement gained momentum. Led by politicians like Charles Stewart Parnell, it sought Irish self-governance within the UK. While progress was slow, by 1914, a Home Rule Act was finally passed, only to be suspended due to World War I. Though many Irish volunteered to fight for Britain during the war, radical Republicans had other plans. In April 1916, they launched the Easter Rising in Dublin. Around 1,600 rebels seized key buildings and declared an independent Irish republic. After a week, the rebellion was crushed, but Britain's execution of the leaders shifted public sympathy. In the 1918 general election, the Republican Party Sinn Féin won a landslide victory across most of Ireland. Rejecting Westminster, they declared independence, and the IRA, Irish Republican Army, began a guerrilla war against British forces in what became the Irish War of Independence, 1919 to 1921. Partition and Civil War. Under the treaty, 26 counties became the Irish Free State, a self-governing dominion of the British Empire. But 6 counties in the north, with a Protestant Unionist majority, remained in the United Kingdom, forming Northern Ireland. The treaty split the nationalist movement. Some, like Michael Collins, accepted it as a stepping stone to full independence. Others, including Eamon de Valera, rejected it, especially the requirement to swear loyalty to the British Crown. The result was the Irish Civil War, 1922 to 1923. The pro-treaty forces prevailed, but Collins was assassinated during the conflict. The Free State survived and slowly distanced itself from Britain. In 1937, it adopted a new constitution and renamed itself simply Ireland. In 1949, it formally became the Republic of Ireland, cutting all ties with the British monarchy. Northern Ireland and the Troubles. In Northern Ireland, Protestants dominated government, while Catholics faced systemic discrimination in housing, employment, and voting. By the 1960s, inspired by global civil rights movements, Catholics began organizing protests for equality. These peaceful demonstrations were met with hostility and violent crackdowns by security forces, sparking riots and unrest. In 1969, the British Army was deployed to maintain order, but was soon seen as an occupying force by many Catholic communities. The decades that followed, known as the Troubles, were marked by bombings, shootings, and political assassinations. The IRA waged a violent campaign for reunification. Loyalist paramilitaries responded in kind. Civilians on both sides were caught in the crossfire. Even London and Dublin were not immune to the violence. Ireland in the 21st century. Since the Good Friday Agreement, Northern Ireland has seen relative peace, growing investment, and a renewed sense of hope. Belfast and Derry, once flashpoints of conflict, are now thriving cultural and economic centers. In the Republic of Ireland, peace coincided with rapid economic growth. From the 1990s into the 2000s, Ireland transformed into one of the most prosperous countries in Europe, shaking off its colonial legacy. Today, Ireland remains divided politically, but not emotionally. Cross-border cooperation, shared identity, and mutual respect have brought the two Irelands closer than ever. And while the question of reunification remains open, the island of Ireland has never been more united in peace.